Hey guys, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. I'm coming at you today with a great, amazing podcast. We have Greg Schultz, who's an American political advisor. He served as a campaign manager and general election strategist for Joe Biden in 2020 presidential campaign, senior advisor to Vice President under President Barack Obama, and the deputy political director in Ohio for the Barack Obama 2008 presidential campaign, and the Ohio State director for the Barack Obama 2012 presidential campaign. Please welcome my friend Greg Schultz.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
It's good. I'm trying to make my face less big. Anyways, all's good.
We could do that.
Okay, that feels more.
All right, that'll work. So I just gave everyone a little bit of an introduction to you, just going over, basically just reading over your Wikipedia page. And when you originally were deputy director for Obama in Ohio in 2008, what was your main goal? What with getting that job?
For me, I grew up in the Cleveland area. Ohio has historically been a battleground state because it's a very divided state. There's no dominant city. There's no dominant region. I was one of the few people. There was a kind of a missing generation of Democratic operatives. There had been a bunch of Democratic statewide office holders in the 80s and 90s in Ohio. There had been like a 12 to 16 year gap that didn't have a lot of statewide elected Democrats.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few people. I graduated at Ohio State in 03 undergrad, 04 grad school, was going to be a high school social studies teacher. And I was one of the few people kind of in my age group that had relationships in the different parts of Ohio. Normally you're from Cincinnati, so you're like a Cincinnati person.
Yeah.
You're from the west side of Cleveland, you're a west side person. And I just, through a great group of friends, one of whom you know, Randy, we kind of just had I had a network across the state. And so my job was to help make the Obama campaign fit into the Ohio kind of political infrastructure.
Okay. All right. So that was, and when you got into that was not your intention. You said your goal was to be a teacher. How much of that influence was because of your parents, and how much of that was because your parents wanted to be, they were both teachers, if I remember correct?
Yeah. My parents are now retired special ed teachers. My brother is a high school math teacher. You should YouTube Teach Me How to Factor. My brother is somewhat of a high school math internet sensation. They do these math raps, have millions of hits on YouTube. So Westerville South High School shout out. I went to Ohio State to be a teacher. I wanted to teach high school social studies, and I got involved in campaigns in my first year at Ohio State and stayed active in campaigns. Did my student teaching in Columbus Public, so an urban, diverse Title I school, for those of you that know what that kind of reflects. And I loved the energy. I grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland. Great school system, but it didn't have quite the energy that the urban school that I was teaching in had.
Yeah.
And I think just my energy level fits kind of fast-paced, rapidly changing, multiple balls in the air. That's just kind of how my brain works best. And so I love my teaching experience, but there weren't social studies jobs open in Cleveland or Columbus Public when I graduated grad school.
Okay.
So your original question, teaching was, and maybe it's because I grew up in a family of teachers. I've got a couple first cousins who are teachers. For me, there's a lot of things to fix in our democracy. Increasing access to just education, vocational education, just quality education is one of the few things I think as a society we can do to come close to leveling the playing field, at least a little bit. So for me, that was kind of like the draw into being a social studies teacher.
Yeah.
But when I graduated grad school, there were no openings. It was 2000 in the urban school, and I didn't want to teach in a suburban school and then have to transfer back. Yeah. And so had an opportunity to jump on a congressional race as a field director, like just out of grad school. So I figured I'd do it and then come back and teach. And campaigns end in the middle of kind of the school year. And so it was either be a substitute teacher or do another campaign. And so did another campaign. And
so you mentioned having, there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of political strifes. Reminds me of a Reagan quote where he said that I occasionally think how quickly our differences would subside or vanquish if we were facing an alien threat from another world. I think that as political lines are drawn between left and the right, we tend to forget that at the end of the day, we are still Americans and we are still humans. What are some strategies in your experience you think could help unite the US?
Yeah. I think, technology, I think we don't see each other. Now, we don't see each other. We don't see people that grew up different, that think different, that pray different or at all. Now, part of that is there's a lot of reasons for that. Some legit good, or like my grandma, moved from Czechoslovakia to the United States when she was 9. They lived in a neighborhood that was all Slovaks.
Yeah.
We by just a people, we've come over in waves, those that came by choice and those that didn't come by choice certainly, were brought to a place where they had no real autonomy or say. And so we've been kind of tribal and kind of siloed or segregated for a long time. I think we've had some advancements, cities, public education does a lot to disperse some of that in some ways. But I think technology has made it so, and the pandemic has made it so much easier for us to live in our own bubble. And you don't actually have to see anybody that disagrees with you in real life. And so we don't know how to no longer have a civil discourse with someone who just disagrees with us, because we've surrounded ourselves in our own bubbles, both sides, all sides.
I think that's partly correct, but I want to push back on a couple things. You saying that that we don't see each other. I think could you imagine, 20 years ago or like there being an official Pride Month? Could you imagine this is pretty recent. I think that technology a lot of times really does force you to bring look at the way other people are living. They have the new especially comic books and what Disney Plus is doing with all the superheroes, and everyone's a different culture. Everyone's different. So I think technology is good in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think the internet, what we were all kind of sold on this is why I'm excited about Web 3, and the actual ability for us all to actually have a piece of it, and not just a fake piece, but a real quantifiable blockchain piece of it. And I think the internet has such great potential, and not just going to pick on Facebook, but I'm going to pick on Facebook. It has been used more to divide than unite. But yes, there are so many things there. This community, Randy, the fact that I get to learn from you, the internet has made this possible. And I know a lot of people watching, I know a lot of Ivy League economists. Mm-hmm. Very few of them can describe economics as well or succinct or as real world as you. And I just want to say that's a great thing about the internet, is it allows all of us to learn from the real Randy Chavez.
Somebody please clip that. Somebody please make that.
So yes, I don't want to be all doomsday on the internet, but the pandemic in particular, and then the algorithms on these apps just reinforce whatever a thought is, left, right, center, whatever, and you just get fed the same thing over and over again. And then you see something that's different from that, you're like, that's alien.
So there's there's a lot of people that don't like Mark Zuckerberg right now, since you brought him up. Partly because anyone who invested in Facebook over the last 6 months or a year or whatever lost half their money. I don't know how much of that is his fault. Either him going out and saying, hey, for the next 5 years, we're probably going to lose money as we're building the metaverse. So that probably didn't help, again, short term. But that reminds me of when he was being interrogated by Congress. And I would say questioned,
not interrogated, but anyways.
All right, fair point. I was actually rooting for him in that, because at the time I saw all of these politicians that were very technologically inept. They were very illiterate in that area and clearly out of their league. So actually rooting for him in that aspect. But why single out him? Why do people single out him as opposed to other people like maybe Jack Dorsey or other people like the CEOs of Twitter and all that.
Yeah. So Zuckerberg actually, you talk about like what unites us. Like the honest truth is like Mark Zuckerberg unites Washington, D.C. Now, that right and left hate him for completely different reasons, but there is a unified hate. Hate's a strong hate. I'll use the word hate. And there are letters, like you can probably Google and see a letter written from the Biden campaign under my name. They don't say what they say they're going to do. They have profited, they have monetized an algorithm that incentivizes division and allows for foreign actors, bad actors, hateful actors to take advantage of a platform that was billed as, bringing the world together in a community. And they profit off of it, and not just profit, but profit immensely. And I'm not against anybody making a profit, but when you profit off of literally turning neighbor against neighbor, or a platform that incentivizes that and the algorithm reinforces that, and then they say, hey, we're going to address these changes, we're going to enforce this, and then they don't. So they don't say what they're going to do. And I have a lot of friends at Facebook. I don't think any of them, probably not on right now, but maybe, but they won't be surprised by anything I just said. So that is why Facebook, and to, I guess, Zuckerberg's credit, like he can be so destructively impactful on civil discourse and democracy because he's so good at doing what he does.
Yeah.
The evil that it is. Yeah.
That's a fair point. So yeah, it's really hard to say something if you're even in like the middle of the road, or if you're center right or center left. People do get really tribalized. It reminds me of a Solzhenitsyn quote that said, "The line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man." And I feel like we can't post about one thing without people saying, "Oh, you're on this side of the line or that side of the line." In politics, how do you think that this line is blurred?
Yeah, no, I'm really worried about like the encampments within the political parties and the parties themselves, and like the left and the moderates and the progressives. And it's, all these terms are variable depending on who you're standing next to. I consider myself a progressive. And then I met the further parts of the Democratic Party, and I'm like, oh no, I'm a blue collar Midwestern moderate Democrat. The scary thing about politics right now is, and again, I don't want to over romanticize our nation's history. We've failed with the inclusion of women, communities of color, indigenous population. Like we've failed a lot, but we are actually built to change and get better. We haven't done it always or quickly enough. But I would argue that there have been pretty large periods of our history where compromise was success, where like Tip O'Neill, the Democratic speaker, would like grab drinks with Ronald Reagan and they would figure out how to get some things done. And I think, again, not over romanticizing, but compromise used to be success. And, late 90s and really accelerated here the last like 5 or 6 years, compromise is failure in democracy. There are some on the left and some on the right in particular, where if they vote for something, they'll lose their primary.
Yeah.
And that is like when compromise becomes failure in a democracy, it gets really hard to get to success. The other thing is, and I won't quote Joe Biden too much, but he always said, and I think it's a really important thing, is it's always okay to question a person's judgment. You should never question their motive, because you don't know what their motive is. Yeah. And he has all these stories from like 70s, 80s, 90s, but I think we right now question everybody's motive. Like you said that because you don't care about little kids, or you said that because you don't care about whatever it is. So we should start with, now I do think there's some pretty evil people in politics, not a lot, but some like evil, bad people. But I think we all assume, I say this and I don't want to sound naive, because I don't want to say like, there may be Ted Cruz fans watching, so be it. But like, I want to say Ted Cruz, we should assume best intentions on him, but he and people on the left, maybe Elizabeth Warren fans on here, but like, I think they'll both demonize the other party, and then you can't get to agreement. If I say, hey, like you're an idiot and have no brain, but like, oh, we should work together to solve this problem, I've already made solving that problem almost impossible, because I've insulted like, or Randy, you don't really care about like women, so like oh, but let's address this. I just made that up, everybody. Like,
Yeah.
But so I think when we undermine the reason why we're having this, when we undermine the person across from us, we can never actually reach a real policy progress.
So there's a lot of, I feel there's a lot of misinformation as well, whether it be about NFTs, which we're definitely going to get into in a little bit, the environmental costs of that. But energy in general is such there's a lot of political strife over it. In geopolitics, it's such a big factor. What do you think, or I don't know if you know what Biden plans to do with the role of nuclear energy and what it should be in the 21st century?
Yeah, so I feel, since I ran the primary, I hired the first couple hundred people, and I was there when when our policy team put together our first policy rollout in the primary was around climate and energy, and Biden actually had increased investments for small scale nuclear reactors. And okay. I think you're looking at Germany and France, who in some ways I think rushed to get off of nuclear. And I don't know if people watching this know, but in the United States and in Europe, the last year we did something we haven't done. We did something we hadn't done it by as much of in the last decade, and that is use more coal. Like all of this progress on climate, and we actually are burning more coal in Europe and the United States. And you can look at the International Energy Agency, IEA. These are like real numbers. So I think in their rush to go all green, they shut off a bunch of switches and realized if you electrify your vehicles, electrify everything, you still have to create the energy.
Yeah.
By the way, China controls the raw materials to create the batteries that you need, and the copper and the tungsten or whatever it is, and the solar panels, all is controlled by, I wouldn't say necessarily strong allies of the United States, or those that care about the United States' long-term interests. And so I think in global politics, and I can speak for, at least the policies Biden has laid out, includes investments in small scale nuclear.
Yeah, I always laugh when I hear that story that I think it was Germany was the major culprit. They shut down everything. And then when they found out, the sun goes down and the wind doesn't always blow, that they have to return on that, and that costs a lot more.
And we should sprint towards renewables, but the reality is that's going to take time. And so the choices that are Americans drive less F-150s, or we our understanding, and America's really good about asking the rest of the world. We drive all these cars, we drive long distances, and we're like, hey, rest of the world, why don't you go right to, you don't have any power right now, but why don't you build some solar plants? And the rest of the world is like, you guys are literally just wasting energy every day, and we barely have lights, and you're telling us go right to solar.
Yeah,
it's complicated.
Yeah, F-150 continues to be the most bought car in the world, the most pickup truck every year.
And now that electrical, I don't know what you think about that electric. I think that is going to help the adoption of. I think there's a bunch of people who may say hey, this green stuff is climate change isn't real, etc. But they love their F-150, and when they see that torque and that that drivetrain, they're going to be like, nope, I'm fine with electric vehicles.
Yeah, big shout out to Elon Musk and the Tesla team for getting that acceleration of sustainable energy out there. So I'm really, really excited about the wars that will happen between all these car companies and which ones are going to be the best ones.
And the wars that won't happen because we don't have to worry about someone else's oil.
Oh God, that'd be the best one.
When Randy, from where you've been in the world in service,
Kuwait was the only country I think that we have a basin where the oil's free. We don't have to pay for that at all. Every other base in the world, whether it's Germany, whether you get a government card and you have to put in that card and you have to track how much oil you put in the machines. But Kuwait, nope, it's just free. Just pull that lever. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And there's so much waste that could be done to that. Obviously we try to do it as much as possible. We try to be as efficient as possible. But yeah, that's the other thing.
It's great to be born in Al Sabah. All of the Al Sabahs of the Kuwaiti royal family, which I think there are a lot, all get just basically monthly checks.
Yeah, dude, there's a ton. It's insane. One of the one of the things that I love about those, like, that Arab money, those Middle Eastern people, is that they buy so many things just for the heck of it, just for like showing, just for showing off. There's actually one of the, I don't know if it's Saudi Arabia, if it's Kuwait, one of the princes over there.
Or
However,
Dubai or the Emirates or
yeah, they actually got a Pokemon card. They got a trophy Pokemon card. I was like, wow, they don't understand that.
yeah.
So speaking of collectibles, we had bonded a few weeks ago at VCon over NFTs, VeVe. What are some of your favorite collectibles on VeVe right now?
Yeah. I was born in 1980, so those of you around that era, so anything Star Wars, basically Star Wars. I'm a Trekkie, Trekker. So I did pick up all the, there wasn't much fanfare on the Star Trek stuff, but those are just good to have. So I picked up one of the Voltron just because.
Yeah.
And I have a 3.5-year-old who watches Disney Plus and Spidey and his friends. So it's like Spidey and Ghost Spider. So I've gotten all of kind of the Marvel minis because I think my kid is already walks to school, with Green Goblin, and Green Goblin does giggle gas in like the kids version. So he like literally like throws fake giggle gas at people when we walk to school. So I picked up some of those as well, and maybe he'll still be into it, and maybe there'll be some utility, when he's 7 years old, with some
Yeah,
of
I hope
the
so.
characters.
Get him as skins or play games. But VeVe wasn't your first. That didn't pop your NFT cherry. What did it was? Was it the V Friends?
Yeah, it was V Friends, and I had a chance to interact with Gary V in 2020 a little bit. I wouldn't say we have a relationship, but I had a chance to one-on-one interact with him, and I just was impressed with passion, dedication, and like discipline. And he's all over the place, but like disciplined in I think the way he is approaching some of this. And then had a chance to sit down with him a little bit earlier this year. Just he and I for drinks for a while, and I just really got just a really good sense of where I think he wants this project to go, and just in the broader. I was born 1980, so I remember Web 1 and Web 2 and the promise of Web 1 and the promise of Web 2, and we've made some progress, but like maybe Web 3 will make things a little bit more equitable, and maybe communities will be built with maybe some more commonality instead of like division. And so for Gary V and the V Friends, like, my kid's a little, I brought up the word patient the other day. And like he's like, "What is patient?" And I tried to explain it. And then the V Friends has like a patient pig like video.
Yeah.
So I showed it to him, and he's like, "Patient pig." So I appreciate those projects that are going on that want to explore and push the boundaries. I'm excited. I think all of you're way ahead of all of us, Randy, but a lot of us I think that follow you and learn from you. It's just exciting to be on the cutting edge. I think everybody always wants to feel their cutting edge. I think this is one time where like the fact that we even know who you are kind of verifies that, okay, we're cutting edge because we know like the person who really knows, more than the vast majority. So yeah, it was V Friends. I tell you, though, listening to you enough, I did those fishies.
You got fish?
I got 2 little fish in my tank.
Oh, that's amazing.
Or whatever my tank number is. So I want to invest time, energy, and some money. Like for the first time, I've done campaigns in government. You don't get rich doing any of those. And I now am working on some other. I've got a lot of fun projects. I got like a fintech, a Pokemon Go for cash. Mm-hmm. Like instead of looking around for Pokemon, my friend who I'm advising has a startup where you can like drop soon to be NFTs by geolocation. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm doing some of that, but I want to, I've been in politics long enough, and there you meet some really good people, and you meet some people who aren't so great. I want to invest time, money, and energy in some people who have the best intentions. And if I can have a small part in helping them reach those best intentions, great. And if I can be along for the ride, awesome. And for me, like I'm fortunate. I think very few people in life get to like reach their professional summit. And with like the type of career I entered on, you know, I'm fortunate. I've worked in the White House. You know, I helped elect a president. Like at some point, I ran a statewide presidential campaign, won. I ran a presidential primary, won. So like I feel I spent 21 years climbing this mountain, and I got to the top. The view wasn't as nice as I thought it would be, and more importantly, there were more people at the top of that mountain that I didn't like, and I realized that they got to the top of the mountain by throwing other people off on their way up. But the good thing now is I'm able to see all these other mountaintops. And so I'm like, oh, there's the real Randy Chavez over there. I want to climb that mountain a little bit, you know, and learn some new things. So anyways, that was a very long answer to VeFriends.
No, that's great. Follow-up question of that is when you said you didn't like the view at the top as much as you thought you would have liked, did that make you feel like empty or hollow or give you feelings of malaise?
No, you know, it's a hard, you know, campaigns. It is not like military service, but it feels like the closest you can be without your life physically being in danger. It is all consuming. You know, especially I've liked every job in life I've had. You know, I stocked dairy and frozen in high school. I made the pizza dough when I was 14 years old at the local pizza shop.
Yeah.
But being once you get to like a certain level at like a campaign, like running a presidential primary, it's not actually fun. And there's like there's no, like you reach a part in a campaign where there's no longer a good decision. There are only less bad decisions. Every decision at some point has such high opportunity costs. And I would make decisions and I had 40% of the information, and I had more than anybody. And everybody else in the media, everybody had 2% of the information and thought they knew better.
Oh.
You know, and like, we don't have to get into anyway. So it is so I feel fortunate that I was on that journey, and I'm trying to be present. And now that I have time to like say words, like I'm trying to be present, which I didn't use that word for 20 years. I want to be present for my kid, my wife, and also like I got to the top of this mountain and I can now see every other mountain. And so I don't think empty, there's some disappointment, but you know, I think the thing is also we all, if you do what I do, like you watch The West Wing all the time, like in college, high school or college, and then it turns out it's actually more like Veep, and a little bit more Game of Thrones. So like, so I am working on a sitcom with the former director of The Office. More to tell on that, and hopefully coming months.
All right, I'll get you back on again when you're able to.
We don't, you know, we're working on through some stuff there, but I may have a show that will reflect some of this in the near term.
That'd be great. If my acting career is taken off by that point, I'll try out for it. I had Darcy Donovan on last week or 2 weeks ago, and she's like, "Hey, I got a new movie. You'd be perfect for a part." I was like, "Okay, that'd be great." Everyone at Hollywood, we're just going to stop at 11 a.m. and go for that drop on VeVe. Smashing that buy now button. So the
Rain Man 2, or is that the guy, the Rain Man? That could be your character, the one that's just like, I'll take these numbers.
I did learn how to count cards when I was younger, and I was very good at it. I haven't. Oh, that's a lie. I still do it every time I go to Atlantic City, but it's just I don't know, nothing's ever guaranteed. You can make the right call, and it really hurts when you make the right call mathematically and then that doesn't work out. It's like, okay, I'm done. This is not fair.
What's the fun thing too for me now, Randy, is, you know, I had the opportunity, you know, I was with Biden every day basically from the end of 2013 until 2020.
Jesus.
And so now I get to like find people like you who are like smart and passionate and treat people well, and like, if I can have a small part in like helping you be more successful, not that you need my help to be more successful, but like that's the fun thing for me. Like my ideal world is all my friends are friends. And so if I, you know, now I get to actually have time to like connect people and everybody kind of wins. And so, you know, I don't have this empty feeling because because now I have this network across the world that it's just like, and a lot of them are great people, not all of them, but a lot of them are. And so I'm going to explore that for the time being.
Yeah, I've told a couple of people that you could probably help the VeVe company in some of its struggles, probably more than I ever could, just because of your connections in the political sphere. And like, hey, is there anything that you could do? And what are some things that have really paid dividends from your relationships in the past?
Yeah, it is amazing how often I think. First, I think there's just a philosophy, and I don't know if a lot of people in the political world, because elections are you win or you lose. And I think they take that approach and they take that zero sum philosophy into like the rest of what they do in government or life. And I actually don't believe most of life is zero sum. Like it is an campaign you win or lose. But I think a lot of life actually, like, all of these books about and these movies about giving power away is actually how you get more power. And it's so counterintuitive, which is why I think there's like Lord of the Rings and all of these movies that like you would never think to get power, you just keep giving it away. And I think I've been successful because I hire people smarter than me at what they do, and then I empower them to get done what they need to get done. And I think I'm really good about dispersing stress instead of amplifying stress.
No.
There's a lot of leaders who take stress, which in a lot of lines of work is immense, and then they actually bring it down. And for me, it's like, that's my job, is to make sure people can actually get done what they know how to do best, and not to say shield them or like mislead them, but protect them from. So I love when somebody texts me and be like, hey, like I have this, I'm trying to think of some real world examples, but like I'm going to be somewhere and I really need help with this. And like, someone's like, oh, I need bananas. And yesterday I talked to someone who's like, I have too many bananas. Who needs them? And the world actually is filled with that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I love giving a little ounce of like empowerment or encouragement. And then I just like to like, I get some enjoyment just watching people kind of reach where they are capable of. So I also, my network is pretty crazy. I mean, there's I don't know, 24 ambassadors now around the country or world who are good friends of mine. And, some of them I got involved, and some of them are cabinet secretaries. And so you've got this like weird kind of mix.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird life.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could think that's maybe similar is, again, in the military, where you grow up with, or you train with people, and then you deploy or they deploy, and then suddenly when you come back, they have PCS somewhere else. And I have friends in Japan and Germany and all over the US and stuff like that, and places in Africa. It's very strange, and I feel like
the world. I mean, it really shrinks the world.
Yeah.
I feel if you have a problem or need a person, I think I'm 2 degrees away from helping you on anything or anywhere. And maybe I don't think I'm a cocky person, and maybe that's a little ego or something showing, but I do feel like.
No, that's amazing though. So there was a TikTok I saw where people in Europe were being asked about what they think of like Americans, and outside of like being loud, everyone all thought that we were like this insane, like we have like guns at our side 24/7, and some people do. Biden he was doing, like, I think he was addressing the nation or just addressing the gun violence thing recently. Like, I was at the gym and I just saw it. You being from Ohio, and Ohio being a pretty gun friendly state for the most part, was there anything that he had ran on that you were personally against, that you just like?
No, because I think the thing about what's appreciated about Biden is he respects, and he gets blamed for it, but he respects the other side, and he wants to make progress. And I think people get frustrated at him on the left that like he's willing to give something up, and I'm not going to attack Bernie Sanders, but I will just make a point. When we were running the primary, I think Bernie Sanders co-sponsored 3 pieces of legislation that passed, and 2 of them were naming post offices. And that's not, and Bernie Sanders, I think, does a lot of good. That sounds like a dig. It is a little bit. It is a dig. And we actually ran in Nevada primary caucus campaign against him. We just, our slogan for Nevada caucus was results, not revolution. Because Biden has like 40 some, and he was there longer, but like he actually just wants to make progress. And so he knows where he stands. He knows also we have to move something forward. The thing I appreciate also, so getting back to like Ohio, and this is the frustrating thing about our current politics, is the percentage of Americans that support universal background checks, and people, I'm sure somebody here will like fact check me, but it's like 80 some percent. The number of like NRA members who support universal background checks is like 50%. I mean, these numbers are extraordinarily high. And the American people are actually more united. The problem is partly the incentive of our electoral process. I'm actually working on a ballot effort called Final Five. It passed in Alaska in 2020. It's open primary plus ranked choice voting. And so right now, the incentive for elected officials is win your, in a lot of states and a lot of districts, it's win your primary, you'll win. And so you now incentivize people to move to the far right or to far left, and then they can govern, and their incentive remains the same. You have to win your primary and you'll win re-election. Now, if you create an open primary system and then allow for a ranked choice in the general election, everyone can participate in the primary and everyone can participate in the general. And your incentive now, if you're an elected official or a candidate, is to actually build a coalition. And I think when you are forced to build a coalition, it is a little bit harder to be so divisive. You have to keep the ability to compromise open. And so it's one of the other efforts I'm working on, because I fundamentally, the incentives are misaligned such that 86% of Americans can agree with something and we can't get it through Congress. And that's where the worst, and this is what some people want, and I'm not going to assign it to a political party, although I have one in mind, but they want people to get so discouraged and think government doesn't work. And I think part of their strategy, I've talked to people in the federal government who were started in the Obama administration. They served in agencies through the Trump administration. And they've told me, a couple agencies people have told me, is like, yeah, the Trump people came in and they came in to break it. Like they came in and just to like make some agency or some program not work. And then Americans like, oh, this government doesn't do anything. And I named Trump, and I was saying I wasn't going to name anyone. But so that's so my frustration is we have to, like, self-government, you have to prove democracy works. We've got to come up with a way to make it work. And then people will maybe, it's like Tinkerbell. Like you got to believe in it, and it only works if you believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's like the scary thing about democracy, though. Yeah. I'm sorry, you asked some question that had nothing to do with Tinkerbell.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, it makes sense. The original question was saying that, you're from Ohio.
Yeah. So I think most people would say, yeah, I don't actually need an AR-15 to go deer hunting. And like it turns out you actually can't. The Second Amendment doesn't give you the ability to like own like mortars or artillery. So they're actually like, I think there's a new focus on well-regulated and also I think it's fair to say, like, and I'm a big John Adams fan. I've got some problems with Thomas Jefferson, but it's all historical context. They also, Thomas Jefferson thought there was going to be a revolution every like generation. They built a system to change. Like they literally, like there is ways to amend the Constitution. So why do you think that their words that they used in 1789 are absolute? Is just like these strict constructionists, like the founding fathers themselves said, hey, this may change. I mean, they didn't think it was going to last very long to begin with. And so like why we get stuck with like a bunch of like old white dudes from like 280 years ago, I don't know.
I think it's just because that, I mean, that's so, they feared government becoming too powerful, and like they set it up. And that's the big thing.
Yeah. And Randy, I mean, how many AR-15s would it take for your neighborhood to defend against an Abrams tank? Like, at some point, like if you need weapons to defend against government tyranny, like everybody can have an AR-15. Like if government tyranny is going to take over with like their weapons, like this is why like you have to kind of believe in self-government, so you never in the situation. But like I don't know. More about military grade weapons than me, but like
I mean,
you get background checks. Yeah. we should
They're
have.
not all good though. Like the military weapons, like a lot, like especially like the M4s that just like that have like the gas that goes that circles back, and then it always gets picked up with sand, and you have to like take it. That is like M16's definitely a little bit better. But honestly, I don't know when a lot of people in the military hear like, oh, this is government or like military grade, and we think like, oh, it's unserviceable. Like a lot of the times, it's not as good.
But background checks, like if you're a hunter, so you require a couple extra days for background check.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, is that like, I don't know. That seems palpable to me. And like, and again, there's gonna be 18% of this country who's like, no, that's infringing on my right. But if 84%, whatever, 83%.
Yeah, I would be a fan of efficient background checks that don't take like a month.
Yep.
Just because I mean, if you're a I don't know, let's say if you're a girl, it's like a single mother, and then you have an abusive ex-boyfriend or something, and they're making a claim on your life, it's like, okay, I kind of need that really quickly.
Yeah. The scary thing though is when you look at actually gun statistics, the amount of guns that are used, like the reason like suicide rates are so high is because we have such easy access to guns. You have a bad, and I'm not saying, you know, I think magazine clips and assault weapons, there should be a ban. That's just my personal.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like do you need like 30 round clips or whatever? I mean, you do. Yeah, I do.
I mean, I guess you don't need it, but that's one of the things that I'm so like I guess there are a lot of Republicans that like Trump can do no wrong, and when he banned bump stocks, and like all my friends had to go and put all their stuff in like move all their stuff because they had that, they were like felons for like 8 hours, because they had to like get rid of it. That was really uncharacteristic of him, who's like he's always said is like a big fan of like the NRA, and he's very proud of them, but then he puts a ban on bump stocks. Like, okay. I mean, do you need that? No, I mean, you don't technically need anything unless you actually are hunting. But I don't know. I feel like most of the gun violence is with handguns, and I feel like a lot of the I don't know, most of the violence I feel like is not used with the AR-15s or
and sensational is not the right word, but the mass casualties aren't with 9mm.
Fair point.
They're not with 12 gauge shotguns. I mean, they're not.
Yeah.
I'm not, so I think this stuff is a balance between, the public safety and it's very complicated. And so I don't think anybody should be dismissive.
It's a very tight line that you have to walk. And it is very complicated.
But to do nothing, I think this is what growing frustration. This what worries me is just like, not even about the gun issue, but I think there's just a growing distrust. And I saw there's some stat, they're very scary. Younger generations of younger people, like 14 to like 20, early 20s, like their willingness for. I saw this poll, some longitudinal studies that's been going on here for a couple years, and like the amount of young people who would give power to like a technocrat, like an expert to make decisions on everybody's behalf, is like shockingly high. But you think about it. Like they were kind of raised in kind of a dysfunctional part of politics.
Yeah.
And the form of capitalism has not worked they don't see it's worked for them or their families. Like that's the scary stuff is like, authoritarianism and socialism. Like those are like, we got to find the broad middle who actually agree close enough. We've got to find a big hold together. If not, we're going to go to one of these two directions. And I remind Democrats, this country will go authoritarian before they'll go socialist.
Yeah, this is why I actually don't mind too much of the fighting where the pendulum swings one way really far and then the other, because if you're always going that back and forth, you never really get too far.
Which is why the open primary and the rank choice voting, because rank choice, I do think it will have a change in just the culture of our, because you can vote for your first place person, then you get to second place person. And if you're a candidate and you're not going to get someone's first place, but I'm not going to like vilify the other person because I want you, Randy, to vote for me second.
Yeah.
And I do think that's going to change some of, and it passed in Alaska. So the U.S. Senate race, Lisa Murkowski will be elected by that system, as will the House race with like 80 people running.
Yeah, no, I agree. That'd be,
So I'm helping get it on the ballot in a couple other states, and we'll Article 4 of the Constitution gives states the ability to, set up the elections the way, in some ways, they see fit. And so it's this kind of continuation of the grand experiment.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Something you mentioned, you said like 14 to 20. There's a lot of like millennials, like my age and younger in general, that lean pretty left towards that. But a lot of people that are, let's say, born in like 2002, and after, like they've never lived in a pre 9/11 world. And like that's, it was so different. Like back in the day, like what was the most romantic thing you could do is like meet somebody at the gate, like in there when they come off an aircraft, and you haven't been able to do that in like 20 years.
It's yeah. We'll also mention 9/11. It's so interesting. Like Europe trusts government, not their companies, and Americans trust their companies and not their government. Like Europe gives like nothing to like tech companies there, and here Americans are like, take all our tech stuff. The government, some government person asks for a social security number. Like, I'm not giving you my social security number. Even
that's true.
It's an interesting, and kind of the post 9/11 world, the same thing. It's like you just feed
but
trust.
A lot of the younger kids, they just, and again, obviously this is not any one particular party's fault. It's both of them, but they, you have this, Wall Street getting away with like literally lying on everybody's like credit score or bank applications to get a house. And then suddenly, their dad that had nothing to do with this loses his job because the bank goes under. And then, you have a reality star becoming president. 2016 was a wild year. That was how you got Biden was so far behind, and then got him to win the primary, which I was shocked.
Yeah, but this is the thing though, Randy, is like.
Oh, actually, that was Hillary in the primary. I'm sorry.
2019, 2020. So strategy comes for me two places: assumptions and data. Oh. And the entire primary, we knew that Joe Biden was the only one getting a large amount of votes from African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans. Bernie Sanders was getting some of them, and the percentage, 0.1% of Black Democrats would have voted in a primary post New Hampshire. They are very white, very well off. Iowa leans much more to the left, and the caucus is a fairly undemocratic process. And so we knew, I was telling people in the middle of 2019, 3 people will be president: Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, or Joe Biden. Only Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders were getting any non-white votes in the primary. So if it wasn't going to be Biden, it was going to be Sanders. And so I was frustrated because we had told all these reporters, we don't have to win Iowa. We're probably not going to win Iowa. We lost Iowa. They're like, oh my God, they lost Iowa. It's like, we just told you for a year, we're probably not going to win Iowa. And we're like, our base of support comes from the blue collar voters and, Black, brown, and Asian American voters. And so for me, the primary played out: compete in Nevada, win South Carolina, 2-person race after Super Tuesday, and then it's us or Bernie Sanders. And if the moderate Democrats could coalesce around Biden, it would be Biden. And if not, it would be Sanders, and then Trump would be reelected. No. So that was like my pitch. And then I would go to New York, and the Bloomberg people, I'm like, I just kind of like laughed it off. It's like, Bloomberg is not going to be.
He put a lot of money into that too. What do you put?
Hundreds of millions, yes.
Yeah, Jesus, just for it to fail. Rip.
Yeah, and for us, I remember we saw a focus group, and we don't have to talk. Is this too much politics?
No, go wherever it goes. I know. Like, y'all want to go into like aliens and stuff, or whatever you want to talk about. This is fine.
Yeah, I remember we did a focus group in South Carolina, summer 2019. It was African American voters, which is the predominant amount of voters in South Carolina primary. And I remember a couple things. One is they supported Joe Biden because he stood, I'm paraphrasing what these focus groups, we heard from them. But 3 things. One is he stood behind Barack Obama for 8 years. And they were saying, I've never seen a white man stand behind a Black man for 8 years, never once undercut him. So there was like a street cred that was showing up in our focus groups that was not changing. Number 2 is right after the first presidential debate, and Senator Harris had a very sharp interaction with Joe Biden about busing. Now, where Biden was in busing in the 70s is where 92% of America was. Neither here nor there, but the group of older Black voters in South Carolina were mad at Senator Harris for that exchange, and they didn't say oh yeah, she's right, it's Joe Biden. Yeah. And then the third thing was MSNBC was running every day, and the woke left on Twitter was like, Biden praises segregationists, which he didn't. He just said he worked with like Democrats from the South, who, by the way, were all segregationists. It's like, that's what they were. It's not a good thing, but what they were. Yeah. And these older Black voters in South Carolina said, yes, that's exactly why Joe Biden should be president, because he can work with anybody. So you had all of like the mainstream media, Twitter, like Joe Biden praises segregationists. Meanwhile, older Black voters in South Carolina, like, first of all, he didn't say praise. He said he worked with them, and that's a good thing for us. And so you have this disconnect where like you had this like real, like with real numbers, real data, validating our assumptions. You had all this noise. And that's the hard thing about politics right now is there's so much noise, and the truth gets super buried. And so, you know, the swing of it was a very stressful month of my life.
Oh, can imagine.
2019. But it actually played out how like we had written a year earlier.
So how does that make you feel when you have like people like the left, like they're trying to cancel their own? Like, it's like, oh guys, if you want to try to win against, you know, the person you claim to hate the most, the person that you claim is like a far right, like, you know, Nazi sympathizer, why are you trying to cancel like one of the people that has the best shots at beating? What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think we started this conversation talking about like the tribes that we self-select and the bubbles and the ecosystems. Mm-hmm. And Twitter in particular, where a lot of, you know, what I would call the woke left, that's just my term, you know, the woke left or the far right, like that's who dominates the noise of Twitter. And that's not actually where most of the Democratic Party is, and certainly not where the country is. And so how big those numbers are, in particular in states and districts that actually Democrats need, I question reporters and others, prognosticators, who are like, oh, if Biden doesn't do this or forgive $50,000 in debt. And I'm like, where do you think these college kids live? They don't live in like these places. They didn't go to Yale. You know, it's like, it's some Yale, you know, Yale group on like Twitter, and like the media elite who live on Twitter. None of them have talked to anybody whose hands actually got dirty from building something in the last like 10 years. You know, so like, you can see frustration on my face, because I just remember like having to like argue, like, you guys aren't talking the real world. Like that's not actually how people view Biden politics themselves. Like I remind people, like Democrats, if you ask them how many people go to college, they'll be like, oh, 80%. You know, in states like Ohio, it's like 23% of people have a college degree. It's and that's, you know, it's
yeah, no, I get it. Like,
Randy, you're getting me all like,
sorry,
I gotta take a breath.
This is what
Skywalker's lightsabers that I'm buying in mass.
Okay, we can switch gears to that if you want. All right, well, we'll get to that in a second. How long do I have you for, by the way?
I've got time. So
all right, let's get this bread. All right, so going deeper into this, when I was talking about,
unless everybody's like signing off and now it's just you and me and no one's on YouTube.
No, there's 73 people here, so we're chill right now.
You built a good thing. I don't want to ruin it with one episode.
Oh no. I hope my podcast.
This stinks.
I hope my podcast wouldn't be ruined.
Yells at that. Anyways, sorry.
No, it's all right. I mean, you got a lot of fans over here. People just saying that you should be a regular on the podcast, and they want you on. They want you on more. So I think that's getting some positive feedback. But when I was talking about, you know, kids born in like 2002 and after, you know, the 20 years and younger, you know, a lot of them, even I guess older kids. I just saw TikTok recently. I know I bring up TikTok a lot. I just, in my free time, I'll just scroll and they have some stuff. They have some really interesting stuff. It's these kids that, you know, well, you have public school that's like a, you know, government subsidized, they use taxes to go and run them. They, for years, are saying like, you need to go to school, you need to get a degree, and if you don't, you're a loser. And like, I was one of those kids that like, I've seen other parents tell their kids, be like, you don't want to be like this person because I didn't go to school. And you know, when they do that and they get, you know, 50, 80,000 in debt, and because that's what they were told to do, that just breeds a lot of mistrust for like government. I think that's why a lot of people say like, no, give it to the tech guys, give it all to the tech guys, give them everything, because that's, I think the kids feel really heck, because again, you had that 2016, 2020, they got all messed up. It's like every couple of years, these kids just get whacked with something crazy, and their life hasn't been simple, I feel like.
Yeah, no, and we've really glorified college education, and you've seen public funding cut for vocational education, and we're paying the price for it as a society because everything's falling apart. There's a lot of reasons things are falling apart, but this is again one of the things I've always liked about Joe Biden. And like, we talked about vocational education and funding for vocational education, and we aren't giving kids the opportunity to experience, like, do they like building things and fixing things? And like, we need to make sure everybody has access to some different experiences. And we also have to like stop like glorifying this pursuit of like, and I'm pretty much like in DC, I'm one of the few people, if you have an Ivy League degree on your resume, I am very unlikely to hire you. Because you don't need me to hire you because you're going to be fine because you've got your Harvard club or your Yale club. But we've like romanticized this like college degree and like make a bunch of money. And then people are like, have maybe a lot of debt or a bunch of money and are still miserable. And like, I wish my mind is just not good at like, actually, I wish I could build things. I can't physically. I wish I was more handy. Yeah. It's probably not my calling. And so I say that I probably wouldn't enjoy it I wish I would enjoy it. But I do hope, and I think we'll see a return to some of it, partly because we're realizing all of a sudden, like, oh, we have to build things in America, like the supply chain, national security, rare, critical earth minerals. Like, we actually need that. And so I kind of hope we lift up some of these jobs like they used to, like I think we did before.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that, God, just being able to fix your own car would probably pay for itself. Like, yeah. Especially if you're buying like beaters, especially buying, whatever. There's a couple of things that I wanted to go over with you based on those last couple of statements. Someone says you need to run for office.
My wife will not. No, she's great, but no, I've done 21 years of.
Yeah, I know.
My hair is very gray.
Well, what do you make of the job reports numbers, where a lot of the jobs that are often created are often in like service industry jobs? They're often in like waitress and what do you think would be better for people? I mean, I feel like nurses, you need a bunch of them because all of my friends that are nurses are just completely overworked and overtired. Yeah. Any medical field, like, Danielle's a veterinarian. She's been working nonstop for like a year since the pandemic. Where should people go? Where should people go and try to pursue careers?
Yeah, but it's the thing that sucks right now. I will talk about teachers. Like, what it's kind of like, and it's kind of like law enforcement, cops. Like, and yes, there are bad. I shouldn't have to say it. There are bad cops, but most of them are out there trying to watch out for you and their family as well. Not all, but a vast majority. But like, think of what, like, those two, we ask them to be like grief counselors and like mental health professionals. And if you're a cop, like, deal with like addiction. And because we have horrible mental health treatment, as you know, Randy, we don't take care of veterans the way we should in this country that suffer PTSD and all of this. So you're a cop, you get like basically mocked, but not mocked, but like, you don't, if you're a good cop, you don't want a bad cop either. Like, they make you look bad. And like teachers, if like you're a teacher, you go to school, sometimes you have a master's degree, and then the state legislature is like, well, you can't teach this, you have to teach this. We're going to teach this all day. We're going to test this, so you have to teach this, even though it doesn't actually help with anything, but it's a test we want you to do. So we have like deprofessionalized, very important roles in our society, and yet we want people to do them, and we underpay them, and we burden them with extra help. I mean, look at like the nurses didn't have access to like PPE during the pandemic. It's like you want these people on the front line, and you like praise them, and yet a lot of these, especially those that take care of like older people, I mean, they're making like sub minimum wage. Well, not sub. They're making minimum wage, maybe a little bit up. And so I we need people in healthcare and teaching, but I don't know if I had a friend and I would say, hey, like, yeah, you should really, you should really go into these fields, like, as a friend, because it's like you get no support, you get demonized by the left and the right, and not supported by the local communities.
Yeah, no, like you couldn't pay me enough to be a cop. Like that, just have a target on your back. People just lying to you every day. They don't appreciate what you do. Like, could never. I don't think I could ever do that. But the jobs numbers, where they like, what are some things that you think could move people towards things that are? I know when Obama ran, he's like he wanted like an army of new teachers, and then the Common Core thing happened. Whose idea? Where did that originate? Where did Common Core come from? And how did it pass? Because it is god awful for most people. That
I think Chicago had a lot of. I don't know that I don't want to overly speculate because I don't know exactly where that one originated from. So I won't speculate. This is also the problem is I think we just, no matter what the policy is, we so rarely talk to practitioners actually living it. We talk to like other think tanks in DC who like represent various industries, but like I think policymakers, and they pretend they do this when they go back to their districts, and maybe some of them do, but I wish we just had, I think before we pass a law for some profession, like some lawmakers should go and like actually like shadow that for like a week, or something where, they actually have to experience how this would actually end up. And sometimes there's unintended consequences that like they just unintended and you fix them. And I think you never want to not do good policy because there might be an unintended consequence. That's why we have, if a system is working, you make an improvement. If it didn't fix everything, you readjust. And like, we're just not in that system right now.
So, I mean, you had your master's in education. If you were running ship right now, like how do you fix that? How do you go from one end of that? Is it just saying like implementing those laws? Hey, lawmakers that are putting this in, you have to go shadow it for a week. Is that the best thing?
Yeah, Randy, these are good questions. Until we make compromise success again, and there's no silver bullet for that.
Yeah.
But until like a Congress member or a state legislator is like, okay, I'm going to go and I have some good ideas. It's also how crazy if you're a Democrat Republican to think your party is the only one that has all the answers. Like, I don't think we actually acknowledge that enough. Like, that's a pretty like crazy thing to be like, our party, we have all of the correct public policy answers. Yeah. So we just should do what we want to do. It doesn't make sense to me. But I think honestly, until we get less tribal, we start seeing people a little bit more, we incentivize communal progress rather than like tribal division. We're going to be, we're in the middle of populate the boomers, technology, climate, geopolitics. Like, this feels like a once in like a couple 100-year crossing of a lot of big things.
Yeah, life is very strange right now. Life is insane because you have that. I mean, you still have like parts of the country that are like so old school, and like I'm not even talking about like the Amish that like have no technology whatsoever, or not none, but very, very limited. I mean, there's parts of the country, like I served with a guy I was employed with that just had like dial-up internet. I was like, oh my God, really? Still? And then you have like these giant tech. We have tech dead zones, let's say like in like the Poconos, but then you have these tech like metropolises, like some places in like New York and Cali. Do you think that with the emergence of Web3, that as humans their brains starts developing in a different way, do you think that we're going to be losing the connections that we have to our ancestors? And is that a good thing because that's human evolution?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think about that sometimes too. Like, we've been built evolutionary to not have the world's answers like on our fingertips, and like now we do, and that's a really
brains are developing that way.
Yeah, are you taking this into like a cyborg route? Are you leading me to cyborgs or something?
I mean, I could. Yeah. I do want to go over AI.
Yeah,
so that is one thing I want to go over.
Yeah, I do think this is part of like this like virtual reality and augmented reality. I don't think we're gonna live in Ready Player One. I think it is going to. I think we're going to replace some of the things we do. So instead of scrolling on Instagram or whatnot, you're going to put on a VR set and you're going to like walk down like a virtual mall and like look at like some shopping and stuff like that. So I do think, and I think we're going to start craving. It's kind of like after this pandemic, people have started to crave. Like my group of buddies from Ohio State, we started doing like a yearly guys trip. And we would go like, to like Lollapalooza or like Austin City Limits. But then like during the pandemic, we're like, and I think it will continue. I think maybe a little bit more of a mix, but we're like, let's go somewhere where there's like nature. And I think we're all overstimulated. And I think the pandemic may have helped us maybe realize that. So I'm bullish on the fact that I think we're going to look for experiences outside of technology as a way to balance this overload that I think we now, and you look at like what Facebook and Instagram are doing to like young girls, like self-image and what the ramifications that's going to have. Yeah. I mean, we can go lots of places there. I mean, and, evolutionary, we're talking, I mean, many generations of that, unless you're thinking that the brain will be developing faster.
Well, I wouldn't say faster. I just think that for years, like in our parents' lives, like up until like our, like the earlier Gen X, or sorry, later Gen X or early millennials, that, for years, nothing really changed. Like they had maybe one or two big inventions like per generation. Like, oh, now, 1900s or 20s, you have a car. And then, outside of radio, the TV comes, and then color TV comes. But the last like 20 years, I think that's Moore's law. As time goes on, the technology doubles every like 18 months or something. I think that eventually, even without merging with AI, which I think we do as well, we'll be doing that in the next, with Neuralink within the next decade. But I think we would not be considered Homo sapiens anymore. I think that we would be considered Homo something, Homo AI or whatever you want to call it, just because of the, like I said, Neuralink. And then when you have, Apple glasses will probably eventually make like a contact where you could somebody can speak and it'll translate for you like in real time.
You remember the Star Trek Next Generation one where they're all playing that game that like somebody brings back?
I haven't watched. Sorry.
Somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. Where they have easily. And they get this like dopamine hit. Anyways.
But that is we get that serotonin dump every time people get likes on our Instagram.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's like a rebellion. Like, even like younger people aren't on, now they're on TikTok, they were on Facebook, and at some point, those are, I don't know. The questioning thing is like how much. And this is like a Silicon Valley rant, but like, what is better about life right now since
when? Because I can go on a list.
Yeah. So, okay. So that is a weighted, because I'm going to, if I said what I said, I don't really mean exactly how I say it. Okay. But, I think so much of like Silicon Valley is based off of like ad revenue. Now what I will say is it allows you, Randy, not having been part of a media empire, to reach what will eventually be tens of thousands of people very regularly as what you're doing grows. So I think it empowers an individual in a way that wouldn't have been empowered. But in terms of like, I don't know if my life is simpler, and maybe that's not our goal, is it for it to be simpler? But in some ways, I think my life maybe is a little more stressful because there's all this technology, or maybe that's just me. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be. I'm not like a Luddite. Yeah. I want.
Okay, so not just technology. You're talking about specifically like social media platforms.
Yeah, because I will, like, I'm in like, yes, I'm talking about like Web 2. Like, what has Web 2 done? Like, I think I could say why Web 1 has done some pretty big advancements for my life.
All right, so I just in the military, people were so thankful for that type of stuff because they like the guys that I served was like, yeah, 10, 20 years ago, you had to go to a morale tent that had, internet where you could grainily not even see a picture of your wife or child, and you could maybe hear them, and now things get, a lot better. Now, granted, that's just the internet in general getting better, not necessarily Web 2, but then you do have picture sharing and being able to stay in touch with people. But yeah, I also think helping understanding, like you're right there. You said before we can stay in our little bubble, but our little bubble, depending on what it is, like I like anime, and for like nerds in school, like there's maybe a couple of those.
Yep.
But if I go and I like a Goku or like a Vegeta fan page on Facebook, I'll be talking to like a whole bunch of different people across the globe. Like I ran a cosplay fun and Pokemon group on Facebook, and one of my best friend Lilith, who I met on there, is from Austria, and we would have never met had it not been for that. Question from Adam Awesomeface. I don't know if you still have Biden's ear. When Biden joining the Fish fam? and can Greg help VeVe get verified on Twitter? I mean, I know Twitter is not. It's a public company.
Yeah, I can't speak to number one. Now his grandkids are a little bit more. Those are the ones that I think are a little bit more apt to get on the Fish or VeVe. So I'm going to say grandkids maybe, but the other ones, yeah. And Twitter, I guess I didn't realize they weren't verified. I do actually have some friends. My friend used to run global policy for Twitter, but now he's back in the administration.
Mm-hmm. Well, he still probably has a contact or two.
But I have a pen, old-fashioned pen. I'm making some notes.
All right, muchas gracias. I would totally love to get verified. If you're writing that email, tell them like the real at real Randy Chavez wants to get verified also. So you mentioned before about something about politics, and not to drag it back to this, but just one. Have you ever heard of PorcFest?
PorcFest?
Yeah.
Do I want to have heard of it?
You probably want to know. I don't know. It might take up space in your brain that you might want to save for other space, but it's fun to know. So before I became like more like independent, I was more libertarian, and there was this thing every year called PorcFest where you would go to Rogers Campground or Camp Rogers Ground in New Hampshire, and it was just where it was supposed to be just for libertarians to go and just be libertarian and spend crypto and like cook food that didn't have GMOs in it or anything. And then it quickly, I won't say devolved, it quickly turned into a whole bunch of like anarchists and like just I was like the rare guy that was using like cash, and everyone else is using bits of gold and silver, and they were using Dogecoin in like 2015. I was like, oh man, I had the chance to buy back in the day. I didn't. What is do Republicans and Democrats, are they at all threatened by libertarians, or do they just laugh? They're just like, nah, they'll never get.
I think there's a really, traditionally they've just been kind of spoilers in. That's the wrong word because I don't want to say someone's vote is a spoiler, but it does. But it has the effect that if a libertarian's on a candidate and they get 2% of the vote that would have gone to the Republican, a Democrat may win that seat. We're, I think, in a really interesting. So if you look at like the country's history and you look at like 1796, 1832, 1860, 1896, 1932, 1964. Those were all, I would say, those are all junction points of political parties having major readjustments, whether it's like the Free Soilers in 1860 or Andrew Jackson in 1832 or the FDR coalition in 1932 or the new coalition where Democrats losing the South after the 64 Civil Rights Bill. But each of those basically, from when, the Adams-Jefferson split on, have almost all lasted like 30 or 40 years, like almost completely. And we are now, I would argue, we haven't seen a major shift until Trump in like the party alignment, like NAFTA, like free trade and all that. But it feels we are in the middle of a long overdue realignment of these political parties. Now, the question is, does it all just tear everything apart? Or did some libertarian now look at like the cannabis. I mean, like
Oh, yeah.
how like there's a lot of Republican senators who are like in their own states, their conservative states, medical marijuana is passing, if not recreational. So, threatened. I think the threatened comes from only distinct districts in unique situations where it could cost one of the parties kind of a seat that they would feel they were more likely to have won. I do think it's going to be really interesting in the realignment.
Yeah, I'm 100% on your side. I'm 100% left and liberal when it comes to recreational use of certain substances. That is how I made my bread and butter a lot of these years.
Yeah.
But that takes a while to get approved.
Yeah.
And how does Biden, or I guess politicians in general, feel about stuff like psilocybin treating depression and psilocybin?
Yeah,
It's
really interesting because I know someone on the right who actually is like very close with Pence and others, who actually has been working to get. I don't know where I won't speak on the administration behalf, because I don't know. But I will say there's actually, and that's something, Randy, if you or others are interested, there's one of the leaders of the Christian coalition in some ways who has helped a third of the Republicans in the House win. Is a close friend of mine, and he, through some family situations, is very big on this. That's one where like AOC has a bill out there, and I actually connected her staff with him, who's like a very Republican, so that they can build a kind of a coalition on some of the center, on the right and left on this. So that's the interesting stuff, is you're seeing some of these things are going to have really unusual. It's like the Koch. I'm not the biggest fan of the Koch family investments. That being said, they actually are really good on some criminal justice stuff. They're actually good on some of these other pieces. So you will have some, I think, unique coalitions that are possible.
That is so strange that you have people that are close with Pence and AOC that are and AOC on that side that are working on like that same bill. That's bananas.
Well, the thing is, when you get behind, I mean, I've got a good friend who ran as a Republican for the U.S. Senate, and like when you get like when you actually can like talk to people about specifics, when you don't have to be like competing, a lot of us agree more than we disagree.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. So there's a lot of people that have, in politics, I think everyone has their vice. I think that certain therapies like those types of recreational substances can help with that. What are your thoughts on like the Tor browser and like the dark web, and how will that get replaced by this being legalized, or will that, do you think that'll always stay kind of there?
Yeah, and my wife comes from defense intelligence, cyber, so I don't know much about some of these things. Could
I get her on at some point?
Yeah, that's her side of the house.
That'd be great.
Like literally her side of the house. I don't know enough to.
Okay.
I don't know enough to like speculate on like where this does with like the dark. Like something tells me that there will always be a utility for those who have malintent for covert gathering places.
Fair point. That's a fair point. So there is, speaking of like covert stuff, I've speculated on this before, and I don't know how VeVe's going to do it, but there are, in the metaverse, and I've talked about this with Earth 2. I don't know if you've gotten any land in there yet, but no, it's really great. There's a whole bunch of different like mega cities. Like I have Chavez. There's like a group called the Lone Wolves. There's a whole bunch of everything. But
I'm gonna open a political consulting shop in there and find a Republican.
Oh, do it. Yeah. So there's this issue that I see coming about where, and the metaverse should be for everybody. And I think people will have to do like, oh, this particular area is going to be for 18 plus. And then whatever happens behind that door or in this virtual space should be, between two consenting adults, and where that's going to lead. How do you think government policy should should work into and try to shape Web3? Should it stay out of it? Should let the good companies be good and bad companies be bad, and let the people choose where to spend?
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier, Randy. I would take a step back. Is the current comprehension among 99% of this, 98% of this country, and 97% of government is extremely limited on Web3. You know, I say a lot of things that I say don't mean to come out as an attack, but they come across as an attack. But right now, if I were to summarize what Washington, D.C. knows about blockchain, Web3, and crypto, is Bored Apes and Elon Musk. And they don't think either of them are good for society. In the way, I mean, because and the problem is every time Musk tweets about Dogecoin, governments, regulators, Washington, D.C.'s willingness to actually take this seriously. Now, it shouldn't be that simple, but he takes up a lot of oxygen. And so, if you're a DC regulator or in Congress and you have an open mind, here's what a bunch of white people, here's what you feel. A bunch of white people in Silicon Valley and a bunch of white people in white dudes in Silicon Valley and white dudes in Manhattan are getting rich. And somebody's probably getting screwed. And there's probably some reality to some of that for now. One of the things about Web3 is I'm excited to actually decentralize and, for us to get together, not need, hundreds of lawyers to set something up where we all benefit and those that believe in you and I could invest in us. And if it succeeds, they benefit, we benefit. And yes, you can do some of that through setting up corporations. But I think there is going to be an ease and a flow that is going to empower and I think bring pieces together in a way. So I won't derail my own answer. I think there has to be an education component on a lot of things, including Web3, and the crypto community is trying to do that. One of the things I think I want to get a little bit more involved is helping some of these, whether it's VeFriends or some of these people doing these projects, to get in front of the people, just so people can see the use cases and utility.
Yeah.
So my worry is that government will be Dogecoin, Bored Ape for 160 million. Somebody's getting screwed. Let's make this more complicated. No, government is not going to stop Web3. Can they be a? And I also think it's fair to say that anything left unchecked, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, the interesting thing with Web3 is if it really is decentralized in the way we feel the blockchain is, does that actually programmatically limit some of the potential abuses? So I don't know if government knows how to approach this right now.
So, I mean, you obviously have so many people in mind, you have had, I think, dinner, you have had meetings with Gary Vaynerchuk, and he would probably, I mean, if he has time, he'd, probably be delighted to go. I definitely have a couple of people in mind as well that could help me, probably Jeremiah Aoyang or Dan Schawbel or Brock McBlockchain, who is CEO of the Fiches, and or even just pretty much anyone in the space that I know and converse with. But
yeah, no, we should talk about what that list is. I was talking to a friend who's chief economist for one of the federal agencies, one of they're all big, but one of the big ones. And we were talking, I brought up blockchain, and he's and he was again, you think about somebody's getting rich, someone's screwing someone over. And you talk about we talk about judgment and motive, and his motive is I want to make sure people aren't getting screwed. And so maybe his judgment on what to do about that may be wrong, but I know him, and from a good place, he's this stuff. And so I sent him, actually, Gary Vee did a podcast with a bunch of rappers and about the blockchain and the music industry. And he's oh, please send that to me. And so I think there are soft approaches for education.
Yeah.
And some of them, will be. And the other thing is government, I don't think they actually know where this actually fits. Who no one's in charge of Web3, but like, who is there, like a regulatory agency that like monitors it? And there's a lot of unknowns. And so, which is why it's imperative. And that's why I respect, I don't know David, you and you know, Alfred, Khan and all, I don't know them.
Oh, you should come to Cali this weekend. There's a VeVe party I'm going to. David might be there. Totally come.
But you know, but what I know about them and why I am not in a rush. I am actually glad that things aren't skyrocketing. If things are skyrocketing to the moon overnight, that's not a very stable. That actually would worry me. Like, and I know, you know, some of the collectibles were really ramping up there for a couple months. If we want this to be what we think it can be and what it should be, I actually am fine with it taking a couple years. Now, I am not making an investment to make money tomorrow. I'm making some of it I'm just doing to enjoy. Some of it I'm doing just to learn. And yes, I would like to not lose money. But and same with like, you know, Gary Vee, like they are doing it with like the long-term perspective. And I think the more we can get people with that mind frame informing policymakers versus like, it's hard to describe why like Bored Ape, you know, and all this stuff is like a good thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but the utility is the exciting part. The inclusion is the exciting part. The verification of the blockchain is like the exciting part for me.
I mean, it is really hard to get, especially if you're so new to the space, and then you just see somebody like let's say like Do Kwon of Terra Luna that says, "Hey, I have the number 6 crypto in the world," and then suddenly they just get wrecked. And again, it's not, I don't think really their fault. Maybe there could have been a little more strategies against getting dumped on like that. But yeah, that's really complicated because you have like,
so like, and again, if people are watching this and they're like, I want OMI token to be worth more, like if it's going up, if these things are doubling in price overnight, like this is not going to be a real thing in 2 years.
Well, doubling in crypto is like, I don't want to say nothing. But,
yeah, that's fair. But you know what I mean? Like people want like, you know, $10 tomorrow, you know, it's then this is like all going to fall apart. Like I actually appreciate that it is taking slower than expected, because that tells me that there is thoughtfulness and there is a long-term vision and there is a desire to execute properly. And so I frustrated. I know people want to take gems out. There's a lot of legit frustration, and I get that. That's not the way I'm investing. So like, take years. I'm fortunate to be in a situation where that financially is also applicable, where it's maybe not for others. So that's kind of the exciting thing about, you know, the you know, VeVe, OMI, and like, you know, and Fishes apparently, and also, you know, the V friends, because there is a like, let's do this right, let's do it for the community, and it's going to take time.
Yeah. So you remember a few days ago I was talking to you about CPF, the Singaporean company that invests in NFTs. Yep. How long before a ETF or something like that is approved in the US that can buy NFTs?
Yeah, I would approved or attempted. I mean, you're still going through these like crypto ETFs and Bitcoin.
Oh, God, yeah, that's insane. That's bananas. You know,
and the CFTC, SEC. So my gut is, again, I don't not. There's no inside information, just pure gut. I would not be surprised in the next like year, like a calendar, like a year from today, there are some funds. You know, you're starting to see not just Bitcoin ETFs, but you're starting to see like, and I working with some folks down in Florida who are pretty sophisticated on like, you know, crypto investments, and they all come from like investment grade institutions in New York, and they're doing it in a very like slow, methodical way. But if there's an asset to invest in, the one thing about this country is they will figure out how to invest in it quickly, and maybe 12 months is actually too long of a time period. Now, how long until it's like able to like, you know, with all the check marks, that is probably 18 months.
I mean, there could be a way around that. Like, you know, if there's no ETF in the US for Bitcoin, there's always MicroStrategy.
Right.
What they do,
you can do, it's like, yeah, do you invest in like the pipelines and not like not the oil,
yeah,
like the currency through it.
Yeah, I like how Americans do have that option, that MicroStrategy, Grayscale, or even like Tesla, which has some Bitcoin, not a ton, but they have some Bitcoin. Well, I don't want to say not a ton. They put like 1.5 billion into it, which is nuts.
Yeah.
So out of all the, and you don't have to specify what's in your bag or whatever, but what attracted you to OMI as opposed to most other cryptos?
Yeah, and honestly, like in terms of like crypto, I've got some Ethereum, some Bitcoin, a couple other like very small. I try to find things that like have utility. Like nothing against Doge or I just don't do any of those. Not that people should. I just, that's not for me. For the OMI, I think it is, again, the people involved and intellectual property involved. Like my kid loves Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and he loves Spidey. He's gonna be 4, and so like these are like you can, the IP that is feeding off of like kind of the OMI token. It's some of the best IP in the world.
Yeah.
And so for me, again, it's the people involved. It's the process they're doing. The deflationary thing is super interesting. Like,
yeah,
that's just a super fascinating approach that they're taking. And so so I think that the people involved, I did some collecting. We've got a bunch of He-Man and Star Wars and Transformers. My older brother is still into huge comic books. I had my Silver Surfer. For some reason, I was a Silver Surfer kind of. That was like my comic book I used to buy, when they came out. And so, yeah, I think the long-term output, the fact that the collectibles, the fact that OMI could, I think, be kind of the energy that runs in multiple facets, this kind of like niche of like assets and of kind of like a hobby, I think it's just super interesting. And again, the people, and like, I don't know Uncle Jeremy, I've met him, but like, these people's backgrounds, and in some ways, if people that are nice and smart and have a proven track record of success join up with other people who are nice and smart and have another track, like, it doesn't mean it can't fail. It means if it fails, it just really was never going to work with anybody.
No.
And this is one that just, I'm in a financial situation. I can take the risk, and I don't view it actually a big risk, but I can take it. So I am bullish. I am not in a hurry. And it's just like, and again, they're not rushing. I know people stress about things taking for so long, but
yeah, I think a lot of that is, this is people's first rodeo. So not only is it their first time investing, but it's the first time that they are investing in tech, which always has delays. Like whether you're Tesla, whether you're like always has delays. And then it's also the first time that they're just like getting hit in the face, like with the recession, with crypto going down and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of firsts for a lot of people, and the people that are getting out now, this will be their oh, I didn't buy Bitcoin in 2014, or this is their I sold Bitcoin in 2018. Yeah. And they'll learn, and the people that are going to stay, they'll be rewarded. So out of Ernie put me in touch with our other friend and you. How many other people in your circle or in that circle also buy VeVe collectibles, like a Secret or a Spider-Man or Riso?
Yeah, there's a couple more within kind of that circle that are getting into it, and I've been like
secret whale group.
Yeah, and I've had or emerging, I guess, like goldfish that are slowly eating more. And I've tried to, there's a couple friends around DC that like, have young kids, and like one of them loves Ghostbusters. So I'm like, so they bought like a slime, or, so I think there are like, and that's the thing, is like this is what we used to say in campaigns. If you give $2, you are so invested in $2. It's not a lot. It's maybe a lot for some people, but it's still not a lot really for very many people.
No.
But $2, like if you give $2, the likelihood that you are going to volunteer, make phone calls, vote, have your friends vote goes up huge. So for me, like the fiche is just one of the things, and you've been talking about it, and I just want to learn what that is. So I like went in. So some of this stuff, putting a little skin in the game, gives me the personal incentive to like learn more and follow more. So I want to same with VeFriends, and I want to look at a couple other ones because I want to learn, and so I'll make maybe some small investments because it encourages me to learn more.
Yeah. No, agreed. So we've gone over that. So you said you've had Star Wars collectibles, and you have a couple of others. What are some things that you're waiting to come that you really want, whether it's for the investment or for that inner child in you?
Yeah, and I kind of look at like my VeVe purchases come from like kind of, I guess, like 4 buckets. One is just like, you know, I never know what to get my brother for Christmas, and so I've told him about VeVe a little bit, but I'm just getting some comic books, and you know, maybe when you can transfer again, that may be cool. And like my kid. So one of the things I look at is like for other people, like my kid or my brother, for like gifts, honestly, because it's cool. And for a kid, like down the road, like 5, 6, 7 years, give them a mini or whatever. And then, you know, 2 is just for my own, just like enjoyment. So I'm going to get every Star Wars there is my goal. Do
you collect any special mints?
You know, I have not like mint numbers, not yet. And I don't know. It takes, I have a lot of energy. My ability to like spend that much attention on like one thing. So to track down like one mint number on a bunch of stuff, it just, I know myself to know that's just not gonna, I like sets. Like I just like, a lot of us, like you feel completed. Like I got the series 1 Batman, you know, and I bought the 4th one because I got the Rizzo and the Todd and the other one, and I was missing the other one. I just felt you should have it all if you've gone that. First of all, if you've gone Rizzo and Todd, just go all in on just like
yeah, you might as well. You're most of the way there.
You know, so for friends or for like my enjoyment, and then like some are just straight up like I do think like my Walt is an investment. Yeah. Like I just think the Todd's kind of an investment. The Star Wars are kind of just like I just like having them, and and then for me, like there's a utility. So those are my 4 buckets: friends, my personal enjoyment, investing, and then utility, which is why I'm going to open up my lightsaber shop with my couple dozen Luke Skywalker lightsabers. Because I just think if this thing's going to work, 19,000 Luke Skywalker lightsabers, like you're telling me that there's not going to be a demand for that. And I'm picking up
that's
$35. Like I picked a bunch up for like $28. It's like, are you serious? Like who is...
Yeah, that was a great time. That was a
and that may have been foolish, but like if a Luke Skywalker lightsaber is not usable or sellable in like 3 years, then probably none of this is.
Yeah.
Like to me, a lightsaber's got like I don't know how you utilize, like you make, I guess there's certain access either in games or like in real life in themes park. So like there's utility for all of this, but like it seems like a lightsaber you can just do a ton of things with.
Oh yeah, easily. Like there's already like amazing art. There is one, I don't know if I took a screenshot or if I had just saved it. They had given their Woody from Toy Story. Yeah, here it is. They put Darth Vader on the floor, and Woody just dual wielding some sabers as if he just murked them. I love what people can do with that. That's the absolute, like, some of the funnest things. But the government almost told Disney that they couldn't buy Fox because they were kind of becoming a monopoly. Now they just filed for their metaverse. If they almost didn't let them, buy Fox, like what are some other things that the government might not let them do?
Yeah, I mean, I think a metaverse is just different because there's no, I think there is some fear, and you see when companies get bigger, they lower the prices and then they clear out everybody and they drive up the prices. So I think the metaverse is going to be hard for anybody because no one's going to understand what it is.
Yeah.
So I don't talk to regulators on this. I don't know any. It would just be, I would wonder how they would go about like saying you can't work together to form a metaverse because no one knows what that is. And the truthful, like we all are kind of, I'm sure we have some idea what it is, and Roblox is in some ways. And so they exist, but like what the metaverse is in 5 years, if anybody can honestly tell you what it will be, maybe people can. but I think that that would be harder to regulate the unknown.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it would be probably like a Roblox or like a Minecraft, but everything is shared and you can do different things with it, and get your own house. Like VeVe one is going to be amazing. What I'm really curious about is that CVS filed for their metaverse, and I don't know what the fudge how they're going to do. Like, what is their plan? I have no
Well, they're all these stores they're all trying to get med clinics in them. So I'm sure that telehealth type of stuff. So I don't know if they view that as like a telehealth play.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's possible. So all right, we got a couple of questions and then I'll get you out of here. As far as this type of stuff, I mean, going away from government regulations and what about the VeVe team, and because they are right now based in New Zealand. I think the VeVeverse will be based in Singapore. Is there a chance that, I mean, we have the United States Postal Service. Is there something that what VeVe could do to mitigate risk as far as pissing off some people in the U.S. as far as going and just trying to stay within the legal bounds of things?
Yeah. I don't have a good answer on this. I think part of the, when you're shipping digital assets, it's a little different than when you're like moving steel around the world and you're buying subcomponent parts. But when you're building platforms and purchasing or having IP agreements, I just don't know the laws of which New Zealand or Singapore operate under, and how much more stringent. So I imagine they've got some really good copyright and IP lawyers, and I also believe digital IP lawyers. There probably aren't any in real. There are people who are becoming digital IP lawyers, but I think if I was a lawyer, which I'm glad I'm not, and I would be learning as much as I could. And if I had any background in like intellectual property, I would read up really smart quickly on the metaverse and like launch in fact, my buddy and I are going to talk to another buddy and try to convince him to do just this. So because he's got a lot of IP experience.
Okay, cool. I'm open. I got the connections. Let me know, and we'll do the thing. So one last question before we end the stream, and then I'll just talk to you off camera for a bit. If there is one piece of advice that President Biden would take to heart, listen to, what would it be? And maybe not something political, but something human, like perhaps something that he strayed away from or forgot.
I think, and I don't know if there's any people who watched West Wing, but there's this like thing they wrote on a napkin that they brought out at one point, but like, let Bartlett be Bartlett. And I think, and here it's like the stressful thing about staffing Joe Biden is he speaks from the heart. He speaks off the cuff, and today he can say something and it'll take you 2 steps backwards, and it will for today derail what you were trying to get done today. That being said, he is one of the few people, the decent, and even if you hate the guy's politics, now if you hate the guy, then I'm sad for you, because there's clearly something you're working through if you're gonna hate somebody you've never met. But he's one of the few people, and I have seen him spend physically I've been with him and he has spent hundreds of hours with survivors of sexual assault, with people who've just lost children or parents or sisters with cancer. Like, the guy gives of himself so much. So he can take you 2 steps backwards today, but if you let him be himself, tomorrow he can do something. He will show humanity. This country needs a hug. This country needs a deep breath. This country needs some real talk, but given with like some like compassion. And he's one of the few people who can do that and it to be real. And I feel the White House is a very constraining building. Like, it is the walls are like bulletproof. Like, there's fences and guards. Like, even if you are the most like, it is a amazing place to work, but also like it's a weird place to work. So I just trust himself. And I'm not saying he doesn't trust himself, but if he does what he feels in his heart, he's going to more often end up in the right spot. And even on policy, like I think, and I can kind of tell because I've known him so long, when he gives a speech, I'm like, yeah, that's like he wrote that. I mean, that's him. And like, that's what he really, not that he says he doesn't believe, but there's things that he wants and really believes, and just keep following that.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah.
Talking about
time. And I've enjoyed just learning from you.
Talking about policy, VeVe, OMI, and all that. And I'll just have you hang back for like 30 seconds after we end the broadcast. Everyone say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. And thanks for coming on. Welcome to the fam. Let's get this bread.